It's really nice to see all of you in person. I'm really glad we were able to do this time, and welcome back, even though it's a little bit different. Welcome back. So, first item is to approve or amend the order of agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, so there we go. On to the next thing. To approve or amend the minutes from February 2021.
So moved.
Okay, a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please signify by aye. Approve.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Today, we have Chris. I'm sorry. Chris is fine. We have Chris from the DCP. He's actually representing DCP, BID, and TAP. He's going to be talking about the utility box program that they're putting together where utility box art can be spread throughout the entire city of Fargo outside of the downtown area. What he's bringing to us today are 50 pieces of selected art, and our job is to approve whether or not those pieces of art are appropriate for public structure. So, Chris, did you have something that you wanted to maybe share with us, how it was determined, the art, how it was chosen?
So the art was, we put out a call for artists, the TAP did, and basically requesting pieces of artwork for this project to put on public and private infrastructure. And we probably received over 100 pieces, a little bit more than that, from various artists, all local. And the intent was to get these displayed on, again, public and private infrastructure. Of the 100 pieces, TAP, the DCP, and BID each had representatives, and we juried the pieces blindly and rated them on a scale from 1 to 10. And then at the end, the scores were tallied, and we came up with the top 50, and those 50 were forwarded to Megan for this commission's approval.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Chris?
Chris, I'm not sure if this is a question for you or just a broader question for all of us to consider. As we, make those adjudication and selection, decisions, it sounds like you had a healthy, robust process in place there. The only thing I would ask is, on your panel, were there some people with some art background?
Yes, that's where the TAP came in. We made sure that there were artists on the selection board because I don't know much about art. I just know what I like to see. Sure. But we did make sure that we had professionals that were able to critique the pieces that were submitted.
And that's all I wanted to double check on, because I think, as you mentioned, a broad variety of viewpoints is fantastic, but there always does have to be, someone on those panels, and that goes for, any work that we do as well, just to help guide that conversation a little bit. So thank you for that.
Anybody else?
I just had a quick procedural question. Was there a limit to how many pieces of art a single artist could submit and/or how many pieces of art a single artist could have selected?
No, they could submit as much as they wanted to. There was no criteria. We just wanted to see all the interesting pieces that we could get and make a fair assessment from there.
Do you know how many artists are represented out of the 50?
I don't, not off the top of my head.
Okay.
I had the same kind of concern. I see that several of the artists have several pieces. Would all 4 of Sue Poitras's pieces be produced?
One of the criteria was what would you call it? Cross-cultural criteria. So a lot of her pieces received high points for those marks.
What I'm asking is, would her second one be reproduced before the rest of these are? Would all 4 of hers be able to be selected? You'll say you'll gray out the one that's chosen, but could all 4 of hers be
Yes.
chosen, or will her whole entirety be in?
Every piece is a separate piece, no matter the artist. So there's 50 pieces that would be selected, so they all could be selected, and that's the intent. Yes.
So Chris, you might want to explain, maybe for those that might not have had a chance to fully process, or maybe for the public watching this, how the program would work a little bit, of how someone would come to you, as I understand it, and select you would have a catalog, they would be able to select a piece of art. Is that kind of how it would work?
Yes, so the artists or individuals would go to TAP's website and look at the pieces that they could select from. And once they decided that they liked this piece of art, they would contact TAP. And at that moment, TAP would gray that out, just signaling that that piece is being worked. And then that would go through the process as far as finding how much it would cost to wrap the specific, whatever it was they wanted to wrap. And then once we return that information to that individual or group or persons, they would decide whether or not they wanted to move forward with the project. If they do, it would remain grayed out, and if they did not, then TAP would, again, activate that on their website.
If there are 50 opportunities and 50 pieces have been chosen, will it then automatically start over again with these same pieces, or will you go out and solicit new artwork?
The intent is to solicit new artwork.
Would the old artwork still be eligible? I know that several of the artists that are in this portfolio are currently on utility boxes.
So your question is?
How many times can you be placed? How many of your works can be placed?
One specific piece of artwork can be placed on one thing, and then it's grayed out. It can't be used over again.
But they're eligible each time,
Yes.
each call for artists.
Yes, the same artist will be allowed to, well, let me back up. I think I understand your question. No. Once a piece has been put on a piece of structure, they can't submit that same piece again for consideration. But that artist can submit different pieces for consideration. Yes.
And they can submit unlimited amount of pieces?
We've never discussed that just because we have never had the numbers that would inhibit somebody from submitting like 25 pieces. I guess an artist could. We just haven't ran across that yet. Something we could discuss in a further future, of course.
Okay. And work that's selected is eligible to be placed in the next round as well?
No problem.
Hi, I'm Dana with the Arts Partnership. I think that is a little bit unplanned as of yet because we haven't gone through the first round. I think we would be happy to entertain your thoughts as the Art and Culture Commission. My thought is once it goes on to a piece, it should not be available again, but that artist certainly could be available to do additional pieces throughout the community. But I would love to see one, if you submitted an image of one of your landscapes, I would love to see that go one place. And then if you want to submit a different image, I'd love to see that go into the additional rounds.
How many of these do you think you will be doing?
I think that is hard to know at this point.
I guess it depends on how much interest is generated from this first round.
Generated from what?
The first round of
John, if we can ask you to use your microphone a little bit more. Yeah, I know they're sitting there, so it's kind of hard.
We're confident we're going to get to utilize a lot of these prints. We're just not sure how many of the 50 are actually going to go on infrastructure.
Isn't this your second round?
Not like this. No, this is the very first. This is the very first time.
Brand new
Yes.
program.
So when you do the second call, will these images still be eligible to be placed?
Not if they've been selected. Well, I would say we will carry them over, sure. Yes, if they have not been selected.
If
and
they've not been
Yes,
selected?
and it's time to do a second round, like if there's 4
So
pieces
now there's
left.
80 choices instead of 50.
I think we need to make that decision. I would say if you're willing to give us maybe 3 rounds to then come up with policies, you know, if it, let's say it's 3 years from now and somebody's piece has never been selected, I'm not sure that we would keep that, but I think we need to put a policy in place before that. But we don't have one yet because we don't have any idea what the interest will be or which artists will be particularly compelling. Hopefully they all will.
I have a sense, you know, Dane and Chris, that, you know, number one, sounds like a great program and a lot of thought's been put into it. It will be interesting to see, you know, over the next 5 years, kind of how it plays out. And I think what we're hearing here a little bit is just wondering in the end, or, you know, a kind of caution that like, oh, I hope we don't end up with 20 pieces of the same person after 4 or 5 years. And I think additionally, and this is another long-range thing, is there just any concern about like everything being wrapped and like when does it get to be, you know, like public art's great and we're all for it, but you know, just the long-term kind of quality control or the bigger vision, I guess. And that it does sound like a long-term thing that you guys are aware of and will be working towards. So
I would certainly say that it needs to be visited and revisited on a probably every other year basis, because I agree, if every utility box in Fargo-Moorhead is wrapped, it will cease to be, then they may as well be unwrapped almost at that point. So I think there's definitely thought that needs to go into what the next iteration looks like. And I would say we would be back in front of you again in a year to 18 months, depending on how this process goes out, to have a strategic conversation about the idea of let's not put 20 John Offutt vases around town or anybody else. And also, when do you get a saturation point? So I appreciate the feedback from both of you.
Yeah, so, and just to build on that, I think also thinking about the long-term view of the geography of where these are going. Right now, you know, the downtown area has been wrapped and that's been a focus. The intent with this program is to expand that effort out. You know, it may be worth for us to look at, you know, if there are parts of the city that are not engaging with this program and other parts that are, you know, is there a way to incentivize or do some more engagement with the community to try to diversify the program geographically?
That feels like a great task for the Art and Culture Commission to then come in with us, because our roles are kind of fixed, but you could definitely play that engagement piece, which I think is a really exciting prospect for the 3 entities to work together, and the other 2 cities as well.
That's great. Does anybody else have further comment or questions for Dana or Chris? Okay. We have a recommended motion. Has everybody got it in front of them? It's in your packet, the second page of the memorandum towards the top.
I'd be happy to make the motion as indicated in the packet.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Great, one step closer to neighborhood art. Thank you. Thank you, guys, very much. Okay, next on our agenda is staff updates. Go for it.
Hey, thank you, Commission. The first update is for the core neighborhoods plan and the land development code diagnostic. I won't go into detail, but I know several of you have been part of at least one of those or both of those as we've been going through those processes for the last year. That work is scheduled to go to the City Commission on May 3rd, and there is a link in the packet that was sent to you that can provide more information on those projects. Certainly, if you have any additional or questions, feel free to email us and we can share some information for you. We also have an update on the Lions Club project Spirit of the Sandbagger, which was at the City Commission meeting just this past Monday. The City Commission is the decision-making body for accepting gifts and for approval of placement on city property or city infrastructure. And at that meeting, all of the project information was shared up until this point, many of you or all of you being involved in that project one way or another since it kind of came to us. And that information was shared with the City Commission, and at that meeting, the City Commission did approve of the project and accept it as a gift, and directed staff to work with our attorneys to on any documentation necessary to place the piece. So we did have, as you're all aware, hopefully we're aware, we did have the model up here in the Commission chambers a couple of weeks ago. I know many of you were able to see the model and provide comments, which were forwarded to the Lions Club. So be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Maybe just to add real quick, the next steps on that, as Megan mentioned, we're meeting basically engineering, the city attorneys, engineering department, city attorneys, planning department, mayor's office are meeting with the artist team to start to document what the installation looks like, what the operations and maintenance look like, what those agreements will be in place, possibilities of, future endowments. The last thing we would want is a donor to contribute to this and it be installed and then the city ruin it with a bobcat or something. I'm just making up something, but, and so we just want to kind of get all those standards in place and then understand, obviously, there's local experts that are making this piece and understand what their recommendations and hopefully keep them on retainer or something to that effect. So as we proceed forward. So as we get those plans solidified, hopefully over the next 60 days, we'll bring those back to you too, so you see those elements in place. But for clarity, you'll remember last Arts and Culture Commission meeting, the motion was somewhat squishy, as best to say, as we were trying to figure our way through that. And then it was even squishier at City Commission. And so the idea, if you can imagine trying to manage the expectations of the private entities, they don't want to proceed without some idea of confirmation, and then they have a tight timeline they'd like to kind of get in terms of recognition of their needs. And so managing all those expectations was a big learning curve for all of us. And so we hope to kind of solidify that as we come forward with some more information in the next, like I said, 60 to 90 days.
We are a commission of firsts. Everything we do is the first time, I feel like. So always lots of learning. Sorry. Anything else on the staff updates? No? Good? Okay. So the next on the agenda is subcommittee updates and reports. Group number 1, capacity building. Do you have anything for us? No. Okay. All right. Well, short and succinct. Group number 2 is neighborhood, and I'm going to go ahead and start talking, but Ann and Tracy, you guys feel free to jump in. Based on the projects that we heard about from the bid and TAP, that whole group, what they didn't talk about the price tag on that. So the price tag to wrap a box going through their program is going to be about $1,000. And when we heard that, we thought that that might deter some neighborhoods. So what we would like to propose to this group is that we move forward with creating like a mini grant program. Our goal would be to grant 10 $1,000 grants for public art in neighborhoods by the end of 2022. And this would mostly be geared towards utility box art. One reason is it's a simple thing for somebody who's not a fairly simple thing for somebody who's not an artist to go through this process. Basically, it's kind of like art in a box. So it's a way for a neighborhood to come together, fill out some paperwork, and pick out a piece of art and have it installed somewhere in their neighborhood. The other side of it is it also would be a way for a school, let's say, or the Plains, who has an art program for children, where they could maybe create, apply for this grant, still do the utility box wrap, but create something on their own rather than choosing something from the catalog, from the bid. So it could go a couple of different ways, but the idea is that it would be simple, kind of a mini grant that these groups could maybe go through fairly quickly. So what do you think?
I think that sounds fantastic. And I think it would be, I don't know, in the capacity building committee, it would not be difficult at all for us to reach out to the leaders in the, school districts. And even district-wide, I could see them at the elementary, middle school, or high school level turning that into a curriculum thing that all of a sudden becomes a school-wide sort of, contest, if you will. But it could actually be wrapped into the curriculum, so they're teaching it as a lesson. Every child gets the opportunity to do it, and then, it could be run that way if that's of interest. I mean, it's something we could look into, and I do think the school district would have great interest in that.
Yeah, that's exactly what we would hope for, yes. And we also did get an inquiry from the Jefferson neighborhood. They are wondering if we would have funds available for them because they want to do a utility box wrap. So that's something that I feel like we probably want to put this, we're not going to, I talked to Chris earlier and I told him that this is something that we're thinking about. It's not something that is forever tied to their program. It's also something that, I would love it if somebody else walked in the door next month and said, I'd like to create a program, art in a box for murals, type of thing. So we want it to be kind of flexible that way. But I'd love to be able to move on the whole Jefferson thing. But any other thoughts?
Deb, I just have a question. You said that the cost is $1,000. Is that per neighborhood, per box?
The $1,000 is per box, and I think that we talked about this. We would want to do a cap. So we wouldn't want one neighborhood to take all 10 of our little grants and do their neighborhood. So that's something that we would want to do. If that's something we'll be working with staff on, so make sure that we don't miss stuff, because they've done a really thorough job with Chris putting together the program. So we should have a pretty good start.
Thank you.
Yep.
So, and just, Deb, if I could to clarify, so
Yep.
with the bid and TAP program, the way that the funding is built, there's a fee that the artist receives, there are administrative fees that TAP and bid and the DCP receive, and then there's the actual materials cost for doing the install. So, if, and I'm not sure how this would play out exactly, but if a school group, for example, or a nonprofit were to come together and do more of an interactive, kind of create their own art, I guess, I'm not sure from what we've talked about in the past, if that would remove, if that would take some fees out of, because they wouldn't be giving $250 to TAP for the art, right? So there might be more money available to either do more with a wrap or to engage with a local artist potentially and do a stipend. If the schools wanted to bring somebody in to work with them, there might be some more flexibility with kind of the grant that we would offer if people chose to not go kind of the pre-built route, if you will.
Yep.
Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, so we do have some work ahead of us in terms of hammering out all these details. But we wanted to make sure that everybody was on board before we went too far.
I think one of the, and maybe this goes without saying, but I think back to Ann's point earlier when she was talking about geography and even our concern about equity, I think one of the beautiful things about if we're working with elementary schools is we're going to be able to spread out throughout the whole city and really hit all these little neighborhoods, which is wonderful.
Yep.
And that equity piece, and I even think when teachers are doing this and newsletters go out, for us, it's actually a great PR sort of thing. It would get our name and this whole, the idea of public art out in the community and to parents and when they're bringing these sheets home or whatever. So I think it serves a lot of things for us.
Yeah, and then we do have identified in the Public Art Master Plan, we do have 10 areas identified, I think, that are, would be right for public art. So we have a place to start that way too. So that's something that we talked about at our last meeting is like, okay, so what do we do about, making sure that this gets spread out, equitably, and that 10 places might be a good place to start. And I got to make sure that I'm saying the right things here, that I'm not misremembering stuff, you guys. So Tracy and Ann are on this committee as well. So if I start stepping outside of our conversations, please hold me up, okay?
No, you had mentioned the piece about the 10 neighborhoods already identified, and that was a piece that I was going to put in. As a neighborhood association leader, $1,000 is a big price tag for a neighborhood.
Yeah.
But I can see us really wanting to be part of this program and bring it into our neighborhood. So
Yep.
having a relatively simple vehicle by which neighborhood associations, et cetera, and anybody can apply, I think is how we can plug into this. So I was pretty excited about your idea for that. So.
Yeah, and then, and if this moves into another direction where somebody else comes to us with another idea for so-called art in a box, then we also don't have so much concern about the oversaturation of a specific thing. I mean, we got a lot of murals already, but a lot of murals downtown, So I'm not saying it has to be murals. It could be, for heaven's sakes, it could be concerts in the park or something, performance art for sure. But anyway, so the other thing I kind of wanted to throw out here, and it's a little bit, it's back to your committee, the capacity building, is we haven't made any, we haven't talked at all about doing a grant round this year for public art, and I would like to start talking about that and maybe get that rolling if that's something that we want to do. And one of the things that I think maybe we should think about is if we want to, we've not done this before, but do we want to maybe use a theme this time and to be sensitive to our times now, that maybe, maybe we want to think about a theme. It's just an idea, something we haven't done yet. So I'd like to start thinking about this and maybe talk about it next time, and maybe we can get this going. The grant round process is pretty good. It always surprises us when we have one that we have, we learn stuff every single time. But just to give you a quick recap of what we do, we send out it's done by staff, they send out the request for proposal, and there is a time limit on it. It's the request for proposal is pretty tight. And then once that deadline has been reached, we have a number of people in the community that have volunteered to serve on selection committees. We will get a group of those volunteers together for the selection committee. It will be different every time. Somebody from the Arts and Culture Commission and the city will also be on the selection committee. We have a rubric that we use. And then the artist is, we did this last time. I don't know if we would do it this time or not. Maybe we could do it via video, but we also asked the artist to do a bit of a presentation so we can understand the art better rather than just reading the proposal. And so then based on the scores on the rubric, the art is selected. The dollar amount isn't usually a driving factor. It can be, if it's something like for $1 million, that might be a little hard, Nicole. But that's not usually what not usually what we see. So we have an idea, though, of how much money that we can spend. So I would just like you all to start thinking about it, and I would like to talk about it on the next meeting and see if we want to move forward on that and get some ideas. Okay. Any questions about that? Yes.
I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask this, but weren't we working on something 2 years ago, year and a half ago, that was art using light?
Ooh,
And whatever happened with that
Nicole,
project?
you want to talk about that?
Yeah, maybe before we go there real quick, maybe just as a placeholder, did Group 3 Development want to talk about any subcommittee work?
You got it. So when our group, we've met a few different times, and we were kind of percolating through which goal or which idea we wanted to really move forward. One of the things that we were struggling with was how do we, no matter what we choose, how do we get the word out? How do we talk and communicate with the community? And we were really kind of hung up on what that looked like and trying to understand that better to know, okay, so how do we present our ideas wrapped around a communication plan and strategy? And so Nicole really graciously helped put together a meeting with Greg Schildberger, I hope I said his name correct, who's the director of the Department of Communications and Governmental Affairs, and Ty Philly, who's the public information manager. And what was really insightful in this conversation with them was they're ready and waiting to help us. They've got the communication tools. They just need to know what the what is. And I think that's literally what Nicole has said to me probably a dozen times now. What's the what? And we were just kind of, like I said, hung up a little bit on trying to understand, well, we don't know what the what is, but we really want to understand how to get the what out there. So we were a little backwards in our in where we were at versus where Nicole was thinking. But it really helped us understand that the city is wanting to be the tool to assist us in getting our message out. They just need the message. We were concerned based on some things we had heard in the past, do we want to activate Twitter? Do we want to go the Facebook route? Like, how do we do all of that? And how do we look at it? And it's like, no, just stop. Figure out what your what is, bring it to the planning staff, and they will communicate it to the city. And the city's really taken a new approach of really looking at this through the lens of kind of like them being the one communication tool, and they'll figure out what the best way to get it is out into the community. So that really, I think, kind of opened the door in our minds, at least, that we don't have to worry about any kind of communication shortages or communication channels that had to be a concern. We really just have to dive into helping to identify what we want that goal to be and get that crafted and put that out there and start planning. So thank you, Nicole, for helping to have that conversation. It really was good, I think, to kind of get that hurdle, or at least what we perceive to be a hurdle, out of the way.
Thanks. Comments?
One of the things I wanted to, are we sure? I know development group, or the capacity building group, I know you met at least once, right?
We met, but Joe was the note taker, and so I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Joe has a family issue, which is why he's been kind of incommunicado. So we're going to give him a little grace.
All right, well, sorry to put you on the spot there.
Not at all.
But that's like, one of the things I wanted to highlight real quick is just, again, for the public as well as for, do we have anybody on that? We're kind of expecting a public we might get a public comment, so that's why Maggie's sitting on the phone over here.
Okay.
But as we, one of the things we wanted to start to talk about, so subcommittees as a concept is new for us. Our work groups is new. I might have mentioned this last time. The Native American Commission and the Human Relations Commission and Arts and Culture are kind of trying to use this format. And it's a hybrid, if you will, of a typical dais set meeting where you have an action board or action things to respond to, business, and then a brainstorming meeting like you're discussing right now. And so as we try to work in the subcommittee group format. And as we start to work in the subcommittee group format, how do we communicate back and forth with flow of information and collaboration amongst yourselves and with staff and with, as Tracy mentioned, with other departments. And so I just wanted to kind of review that real quick. We touched on it last time we met, but to touch on it again, just we're seeing not so much in this group, but with other commissions where subcommittees meet and then they're like, what do we do? You know, and so, or what do we need to do? And so one of the things we're trying to do is integrate this with the city's operational calendar, meaning budget year, work plan things, staffing requests, things like that. And so you'll see in your group, one of the things that I'm trying to get to is an adopted work plan by the city commission. And so that's a tall order. We've never had one. And so as our department, we have a capital improvements plan, but and so what I'm seeking your help with is next time you meet over your subcommittee, if you could help us start to identify your work plan goal, and can you make that actionable? This is all in your packet. I'm doing this more for the public. And then like kind of what barriers you see, and then can you identify resources and barriers that you might need? Like Tracy just mentioned, I need to know more how communication works, or we need this expertise in XYZ, fundraising, whatever. You know, can you start to identify those? And you'll hear me say, you know, what's the what? And the what of it is like, what problem are we trying to solve? What are we trying to identify? And what does city taxpayer dollars, what's the purpose of those? Again, knowing that we have many other arts organizations, arts community members, et cetera, in our community. And so how do we distinguish ourselves from, say, some of those other elements? I'm asking all of our boards to go through these and then bring that back to your chair of your committee. So that'd be Joe, Deb, and Tracy. And then if you can do that over the next 30, 60 days, and then those folks start to, those leaders can then culminate that with amongst themselves as we develop our agendas. So as an example, Deb and the neighborhood committee brought forward this idea of 10, I can't remember how you said it, 10 boxes by the end of 2022. You know, it's a pretty specific thing, which is great. And that's something that we can start to figure out. Do we have the resources for that? How do I set aside $10,000? That kind of stuff. How do we market that? You know, so we can start thinking out the how, or figure out what partners we need to bring on to figure out the how. And but those are the kinds of things. And most importantly, you'll see is how does this tie to the public art master plan? And so if I can start to get that from your group, the Native American Commission group, FYI, all of our other boards that we support, then I can hybridize those into a planning department work plan. And then, or also figure out specifically if I'm asking for resources like a staff or $1 million for public art, then we, hopefully for the public, they realize I'm joking.
Yeah.
But I keep forgetting there's other people watching this.
Yeah.
And so
It's a joke.
then that we can start to put those pieces together and tell the story. And then that goes back to the communication loop of what's the what. And so, anyway, I don't want to script exactly how you're working as a subcommittee, because that's the idea of brainstorming and working and creating and free think. And then the action. So if you decide 10 boxes, that could come forward to you as a action item maybe next month, right? That you actually vote on and we incorporate, and that gives us the clarity that's something you want to do, you know. And so as we turn an idea brainstorming into something you vote on and action, that's the goal of that flow.
Thanks.
And it looks like we have someone for public comment.
Okay. Are you done?
Yes, I am done, and be glad to answer any questions, and I'd be
Yes.
glad to go back to Tracy's question on the capital art project, too.
Yes. Oh, yes, we didn't get an answer on that one.
Yeah, that was delayed with the pandemic, and we haven't quite picked that up for a number of reasons. And we'd be glad to talk to your group, or this would be another one to bring to the development committee or capacity group as well. And so that's the other thing, is when ideas or things come to us say mid-month or mid-week or whatever, we can reach out like we did with DCP's proposal and say, hey, neighborhood committee, would you mind taking a look at this and vetting it, see what you think, give us your opinion. And that gives us an opportunity for dialogue as well. And we kind of know which people are interested in which things, and not just broadcasting an email committee-wide and reply all starts to happen and all those things.
Quorum, move. Okay. Other questions regarding staff update? No? Okay. So we have, I guess we have a member of the community with us. So, so now is the time for public comment. Because we're running pretty tight here, I'd like to keep the comments at 3 minutes, and we have a timer. So we have a caller? Yes. Please, go ahead. Welcome.
Okay, should I begin now?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, I wanted to address the downtown water tower painting design.
Okay.
My name's Christopher Cohn. I had intended to address the ACC at the December meeting, but it had been canceled, and so I'm getting back a little bit late. But at the time when I first saw the design, the final design wasn't my favorite. But since that time, I do see what's right about the design. It does have good elements. I think the colors are good. And I think the artist did a good job in the small amount of time that he had. However, I think there's a particular flaw in it, in that it has sort of a dripping cheese effect right along the point of the tower where it angles downward. And I had asked planning and even the city commission if that part of the design could be augmented and changed and improved, and I never got an answer back on that, and I was wondering why it couldn't be. So I was wondering perhaps the artist was given copyright, and he would have to be paid an additional fee or something to change that, and so that's why it's impossible to do it, or if there's some other reason. But if you could let us know why, or if you're simply satisfied with the design and you don't think it should be changed. Although in quite a few of the public comments in various postings on Facebook, quite a few artists, said they didn't like the design. And by the way, all of those posts were simultaneously taken down. I was told by somebody at one of the area arts organizations that they got a call from somebody at the city who said they did not like the conversation, and then that area arts organization decided to take it down. Now, these arts organizations are heavily dependent on the city for grant money. So I think that was really improper for somebody, and I don't know who called up arts organizations and told them they didn't like the conversation. Why didn't they like the conversation? I think city residents and artists are entitled to their opinion, whether or not they like the design or not. They should be free to say so. And by the way, it's possibly a First Amendment violation to interfere and try to get comments taken down. Although I'm not sure about that, because it is a private organization's right to take comments down or not. But the action of a city staff person to try to interfere in...
Okay, Mr. Cohen, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes are up. We have note of all of your comments, and I think that this commission can't answer those questions for you. I think those are questions for staff, am I correct? Yeah, and I don't know if you want to take it now or if you want to call back.
Yeah, we can, typically in public comment, I know we don't get a lot at the Arts and Culture Commission.
Yeah.
But typically at the public comment period, like at City Commission, it's, one-way dialogue.
Okay, all right.
And,
Okay.
but, I think these are concerns,
Yes.
obviously, that Mr. Cohen is presenting forward.
Okay, all right. So, Mr. Cohen, your concern, thank you for bringing this to our attention. And your concerns are noted. And I think we'll be discussing them on the executive. We'll be discussing them again to see what we find out, if anything. So thank you very much for calling in. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So is there any other business? No? Okay, our next meeting is May 19th. Hopefully, nothing goes sideways and we'll be able to be in person again. And thank you very much. We're adjourned.